Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at the 10th Annual Seattle Asian American Film Festival. My name is Adrian Alarilla, and I'm with the Seattle Asian American Film Festival, and I'm moderating the Snapshots program Q&A that you're tuning in for today. I just wanted to start with introductions and go around the room. If everyone can talk a bit about themselves and their films as well, starting with Samudranil Chatterjee.
Hey guys, so my name is Samudranil Chatterjee. I'm an Indian-born Australian, and I've been living and working out of the United States for the last few years. So I predominantly work as a director of photography, but there are sort of occasional, stories that I've sort of started to direct. So this is probably one of my first, sort of close to my heart project that I've put forward. And I'm just very excited that it's sort of, starting to get into places. So she'll be it's a story about, it's a quintessential sort of bicultural story. So it's about this Indian woman who sort of is grappling with her identity in a very sort of surreal way. And I wanted to kind of create it where it isn't sort of very on the nose, because I think it is something that's very, very it's something that I think everyone can understand and relate to. And I wanted to sort of say it in a way where people took home the message and kind of thought about it later, and it kind of builds. And I wanted to do that with dance. And yeah, I kind of hope everyone likes it.
Thank you so much, Samudranil. Next up, we have Corinne Manabat Cueva.
Hi, everyone. I'm Corinne Manabat Cueva, filmmaker of the experimental documentary short Synchronized. And I am a native New Yorker, born and raised from the forgotten borough of Staten Island, but I live in the Bay Area currently. And Synchronized came about because I wanted to challenge myself visually, aesthetically, in which coming from background from documentary, I wanted to tell a story where you didn't have to have a verite and talking head. And I was very much inspired by hip hop and mixtapes. So some of my inspirations, I wanted to create this experimental documentary about 5 queer women living in Oakland and how space and place are interconnected with their stories about themselves. So again, it was just like a cool idea that I had and was hoping to embark on it and actually finished it. So I was so proud to make it during the pandemic and actually finish it because it was so hard with the soundscapes and all. But it was definitely like a visual mixtape, and I hope that shined through when you watched it. And Synchronized was part of a program that I was in for 2 years called Retake Oakland, when it was specifically a fellowship telling stories about people living in Oakland. So I'm so happy for it to be a part of the Seattle Asian American Film Festival. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Corinne. Up next, we have Zoe Eisenberg.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Zoe. I'm a writer, director, and producer out of Hawaii. And I'm here with my narrative short Cashback, which follows a pregnant movie theater manager on her last night of work. She finds a bag of cash under a seat and has to decide what to do with it. This is actually only the second film I've directed. It's the first that I've directed on my own. I've co-directed in the past. So I'm really excited and grateful to be here. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Zoe. Next, we have Matt Ferrucci.
Hi, my name is Matt Ferrucci. I am the writer, director of the short Anything for You. Anything for You, well, first off, I live in Los Angeles, but right now I'm in San Francisco, Bay Area in the house. What's up? Anything for You was actually originally a one-act play that I had read 1,000 years ago when I was in acting school, and I saw this one act. It was always put up in showcases, and it was originally with two women. And during the pandemic, I was trying to find something to direct that was very contained. And the play takes place over lunch with these two women who are best friends that one decides that they want to have an affair with the other woman. And I thought it was great. I wanted to do it. So I reached out to the playwright and she said, great. And I said, I want to change it to two men instead of two women. And she said, that sounds cool too. So it's this really, I thought, fun story about infidelity and emotional intimacy and the complexities of male friendship. And I thought two straight married men talking about having an affair with each other on their wives over lunch without any clothes being ripped off was a really entertaining way to kind of examine bro culture and alpha male mentality and sexual fluidity in a way that felt kind of mainstream and accessible and not too heavy-handed. Yeah, and I had two really great actors who I wanted to work with, and we got the team together, and we shot it about a year ago, and I'm really stoked that it's in this festival and you guys can see it.
Thank you so much, Matt. And last but not least, we have Asad Faruqi.
Hi, I'm Asad Faruqi, and I am currently in Atlanta, Georgia. But interestingly enough, next month I'm moving to Ellensburg, Washington, which is like I think a couple hours from Seattle because I teach at Central Washington University there, and they're back in person. My short film is called Congratulations, or it's known as Mabruk. It's an ensemble piece about a party that takes place on the day of Eid, which is a Muslim holiday. And this one family comes over to another family's home and they discuss politics, and there's a lot of nationalism, Pakistani and Indian identity, and what's being Muslim enough and things like that. And it's just really just an amalgamation of like my childhood memories growing up in America. Because I grew up in Pakistan until I was 8, and then we moved here for my mother's cancer treatment, and we'd attend like these households, and this is what the conversations would be about. Like the males and the females would be separated, and like there would be like politics being politics within the male kind of side, and then the female side would be gossiping about something, and then the children would just be lost. And this film kind of explores that, but it also explores like what it means to be bicultural here, how difficult it is to be an artist, and amongst so many doctors and engineers, and then cousin marriage. There's a lot in it. So, but yeah, I mean, I think that's the fun part about a film that takes place in one location, and it's like a party where anything can go wrong, and most things do go wrong. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing a bit about your films. When we put this program together, we were thinking of, all these sort of day-to-day mundane moments, right? Like going to the laundry or visiting someone at a party, or just walking across the street, having lunch, or just at your day job. And most of your films talk about, on the surface they look like they're just about really mundane things, but deep inside they really have deeper meanings. And I was just wondering if you could all talk a bit about that. Feel free to start speaking first, or feel free to interrupt, or if you have questions for each other as well, feel free to do that too. Yeah, does anyone want to start?
I'll start. That's a great kind of way to introduce my film, I think, because on the surface, it just looks like this theater employee trying to figure out what to do with some money that she found and didn't expect. But it was inspired by my experience as a woman in her 30s who is deciding not to have children, and all of my friends who are having children. It changes our relationships, and it's an exciting time, but also a bit of a bittersweet time. So the relationship between my two central characters, the manager and one of her longtime employees, they've developed a deep friendship. So this is her last night of work. So it's a bit of a goodbye for them. And they don't actually really acknowledge that directly, but they are both pushing one another to make a decision that they think will be best for the other. So the employee is trying to get the pregnant manager to, keep the money that shines because she thinks it'll be good for her. And the manager is trying to get the employee to apply for her job because she won't be coming back. So I think it's a really simple story. It's 7 minutes long, but the inspirations were a little bit deeper.
Adrian, can I ask a question to Zoe? Did you ever find a bag of money under a chair with a lot? Was that based on something that happened to you?
No, I'm really involved with the theater that I shot on. So we find all kinds of interesting things. I used to direct live stage shows there. We never found a large bag of cash, but maybe all of you can relate. At the time when I wrote this, I was trying to finance a much larger project. So I think finding large pockets of money was just like, hey, that'd be great.
Yeah, right.
This is going to pay for so much crew and food if you find a bag of money.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. Daydreaming, right?
Yeah, go look under.
I was going to say, so this was my sort of first, foray into directing. And I struggled a lot with the idea of sort of what I understood as story structure, and going into something that's a snapshot or a vignette. And dealing a lot with sort of like imposter syndrome. I found it like I sat on this film for so long to just say like, no, it's not what it is. It's not, I don't think it's, within, no one cares, like that sort of idea. When you do want to try and tell what I would consider is like a very simple story or an idea told in, creative ways. Cause, our like characters might not be doing insane things or big emotional beats or any of that. I sort of found that there was a bit of a, mental block for me going into it. And I'm curious if that's sort of the same, if you guys, I saw a lot of nodding heads just then. I'm curious what you guys sort of went through.
I can answer that. Oh wait, go ahead, Matt.
No, you go.
Oh, cool. To answer, well, for Adrian's question, now that I think about it, I'm like, snapshots, this is why we're in snapshots. I didn't even think about it of it being mundane, but I was like, because I always think that even though something simple can always still be complex and beautiful. So I'm just like, oh, it makes sense why it's snapshots and we're all together. I see what y'all did there. Anyway, but in terms of like, like the making a film, right? And like story structure, I mean, obviously my film is like, I was like, I'm going to go against what I was told in grad school. I'm just going to do whatever by feeling. And to me, I was like, some people are going to like it and some people are not. But to me, I was like, this is what is resonating with me. And if you can tell a story in whatever way that you can express yourself, I'm all for it. So, but there are times though, I mean, all the time, every time I make a film where I'm like, I'm just be happy if someone watches it. And if they do like it, I can't be the only one. So.
I'll go.
Yeah.
Snapshots too. That light bulb just went off also. But yeah, I mean, I guess, for my short, these two guys are just having lunch in a bar, and obviously we're in restaurants all the time looking at people or wherever we're people watching and wondering what kind of conversations are happening right over there. And I think for me, if kind of to your point, which you're talking about, sort of the imposter syndrome is, I think for me, it was just sort of the subject matter of the, obviously it touches on sort of some sexual fluidity tones and kind of being cognizant of the audience and being truthful to these characters who are, I think, trying to figure out who they are sexually or repressed in a certain way, whether they're gay or straight. Even though I think the story itself isn't really about that, it's just about friendship. But I think, you always want to tell a story truthfully and also for me, it was based off of a play, and I wanted to do justice to the playwright. And even though I adapted it and changed the characters and sort of updated some of the tone, I was more nervous, when I sent her that final cut, and her giving me the thumbs up. But I think at the end, we just all want to tell really interesting stories that start a conversation. And I loved yours, Sam. I thought it was great. It got me from jump. I was like, what the hell is happening here in this laundromat? And in 4 minutes, there was an arc there and there was a journey. So it was very cool.
Thanks, Matt.
So I think in terms of just moments, it's about like, it is a snapshot, obviously, it's like a party, but for me, it was, whatever's being said on the surface, it's not that, there's deeper hurt there, and deeper pain there, where if someone makes a statement, it isn't that they believe so much in that statement, it's just that they know that the other person will get hurt by that statement, and that's all that matters. And it's so interesting that one thing that I've learned is that, every family kind of has, I've watched this documentary about Rajneesh, I think Wild Country or something is what it's called.
Yeah.
It takes place in Oregon.
Yeah.
And, it's just so ridiculous that in the early 1980s in the middle of nowhere, Oregon, this brown man had pretty much white slaves, and here's this big cult leader who can do, how does he do what he does? And then I thought about it, that there's a lot of Rajneeshas in your own life. They just don't have that kind of magnitude, right? They don't operate on a macro scale. But, if you're on a table and having a conversation with 5 people, there's always going to be that one person that kind of leads the conversation through gusto and not necessarily through logic or facts. But it's that passion that they exhibit that no one's willing to question, and that's that mentality. It's that, no, just listen to me. I know what I'm talking about. And then people end up listening. And so to me, it was when I was doing Mabruk, I was like trying to find those moments where whatever they're saying, it's so irrelevant, those feelings and politics about Pakistan and India, because you're not living there. But it's about that deeper pain, knowing that someone else is from India and you're originally from Pakistan, and then they're kind of called like immigrants, which is, I'm from an Urdu speaking family. So both my parents were born in India and I was born in Pakistan. So we're never Pakistani enough, and we're never Indian enough. So now it's like, well, what the hell are we? And so it's about that even though this family's visiting on Eid, they are making these statements just to hurt that other person. It is not that statement is factual. So it's true. It is so much deeper than just, what's being said.
What I thought was interesting about yours is just the sandwiching of him doing the audition tape as a terrorist. It's like just like the lowest common denominator label you can put on somebody, right there. So that was cool.
Oh, those roles still happen. I mean, they're not terrorist
totally.
number 2, but you'll get like, convenience store clerk number 2, or ethnically ambiguous coworker, things like that are still out there. So you still have to for that one way.
Totally.
Thanks so much for sharing, everyone. Your comments really made me wonder about, how much does, identity, either your character's identity or your own identity, how they identify as, how did that shape and how did the Asian or, the diasporic experience shape that, your stories?
I'll go.
Oh no, sorry, Matt, you go.
No, Sam, you go.
Okay. Well, something that happened actually a few years back that sort of made me a lot more conscious was that, as is the same with Assad. Sorry, did I say that right? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So as it was, very similar growing up, Indian and Australian, and having this kind of, having never really fitting into both, and then having both sides be used as a weapon against you. And as I was making more and more films, I started to realize that, like, my partner actually pointed it out, that the films that I was shooting were very much, the struggles of the minority. And I wasn't consciously picking these projects or these scripts, but they just happened to have these things. And I realized that like I could take the feeling and, use that to sort of guide the visual language and have a good idea what an actor is going through during the beats. And it took it. And I think outside of just, so I think for me, it isn't always about the Indian Australian or the Indian American or sort of the Asian and the American side. It's just that in that struggle, I can take it and sort of use that to understand other characters and other people's struggles. And I think that's probably, that's probably as far as I'm willing to use it as a tactic. But then if there are stories that I love and I've written and is a part of my heart in this sense, then, it's going to be like, it's going to be about the Indian Australian or Indian American or whatever sort of struggle. But yeah, I've definitely used it as a guide towards shooting other films.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. If I may ask real quick, just curious, could you say more about the significance of Kathakali? Is that right? Is that the kind of dance that?
Yeah, it is. I mean, the significance was that there's a lot of, I find that Kathakali is away from sort of all of our other, or as far as much as I'm informed, all the other dance tells sort of a different story, and it all kind of comes back. So Kathak, Bharatanatyam, all these other dance forms sort of came traditionally through the gods. But Kathakali generally is used a lot more in a theatrical sense. And the other thing is that the makeup that we have is traditionally, again, used only by males. So the males actually look like that. So the men usually were the ones doing that. And so in this case, we have, that sort of also modernizes it, although it's not, you'd have to be a Kathakali expert to pick up on that. But the significance was honestly nothing more than the fact that it's theatrical and that it's a part of, it's really just it's the facade, it's the shape, it's the mask of the culture. And it was the quickest way, because, my film doesn't have any audio to it. There's no dialogue. So it was the quickest way to visually represent like sort of intricacies of the Indian culture without bringing too many other forms into it that sort of scattered the narrative. That was kind of it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. Does anyone else want to talk about their films too?
Yeah, I think for to answer your question, I think, I'm Filipino and I'm Italian, and when I was an actor, all I played was Latinos. I always felt like that box was always like other that I would check in life. And I think that doesn't kind of inform subconsciously how I kind of approach my art, sort of being the outsider. I think just in general terms with anything for you, I thought just on a base level, like these are two roles that would, if this was a Hollywood movie, would be cast with Paul Rudd and Jason Bateman. Like these aren't like the sidekick roles, these are like two leads, and you're going to get the most broad actors for it. And we don't see enough of people of color in certain roles, especially like sort of broad comedic leading man roles. And so two of the best actors I know in my circle, one is a Filipino actor, Elaine Uy, and one's Sunkrish Bala, who's an Indian actor, and they're great. And I was like, I want to put them in this role, not because it's an ethnic part, but let's give them as much meat as they can get that they don't get in their sort of mainstream acting life. And from that standpoint, I thought it would be cool to put out there in that way. So
I grew up attending the mosque a lot, relatively conservative Muslim family, and it's like a bubble. You see people who don't really represent America. Like, so whenever I'm at home, it was Pakistan, and whenever I went to school, it was America. And really, that's the distinction, because whenever the TV's on, it's always some Pakistani or Bollywood movie that's playing. we only speak in Urdu, we only eat South Asian food, we wear our clothes, like it's very much Pakistani. And so that's kind of just what I knew, is that the best way to represent it is kind of the way it is, where it's like there are no really American or white people necessarily in a house. It's a very kind of what's called Desi culture. And so, I mean, I think this film is representative of like so many, kind of just the world of most of the stuff that I would ever write. Obviously the stories would be very different, but that world of like the kinds of characters that are there. And the other thing was that I was meeting the most interesting people at the mosque. There were these characters who may as well be actors, but they're not, and to me, people who never try to be funny are the funniest, because they don't realize how funny they are. And so I'd meet a lot of those people at the mosque, and I was like, man, I have to bring some of those kinds of people to life here, because I've never seen that. So, yeah.
Sounds like a very interesting mosque to attend. Corinne, Zoe?
Sure. I think for me as a filmmaker or even a media artist, I don't know how to not have to make a film not about women of color. It's just like inherently like the thing that I think of. And I always think about like representation, and not in the sense of like the multi-layered nuances. Like for women of color, we're not just like feminine, or we're not just like, got to look a certain way. And I wanted to also like play around with that with Synchronize, where just because you don't see the women's faces doesn't mean there's no value in what they're saying. Like they're being empowered by with their voice. That's how you can tell, and the fact that it's together. So I'm always like thinking of like not kooky, but like conceptual ideas where we can tell stories in very different ways, and I'm all for it. But myself being Filipino American, growing up in New York, but don't speak Tagalog, but I'm Filipino. There's like all these things, right? And then I resonate with hip hop culture. So it's like, where do you belong, Corinne? So like, I always tell stories about the underdog, like my previous films about undocumented youth and my friend who used to be in a gang back in the day. So I always love, and I resonate with stories that like just come from the communities that I'm from, and it just comes natural to me. But I'm definitely branching out more than just being like a documentary filmmaker. I'm all about like, let's just try something new and what feels right, and hopes that could shift the way that stories are told. But yes, I can't not talk about women of color in my stories and behind the scenes as well. It's just inherently like my thing to have like someone I know who's the homie who's like, okay, you're gonna do my audio for me, you're a woman of color. But like that's just like me as a filmmaker.
Yeah, I can piggyback on that. I mean, it's very natural for me to just be putting women at the forefront of my stories, and that's what I relate to. Not that I can't access other stories, but when I, kind of trying to come up with things, that's always what leads. And then I also identify as a regional filmmaker. So I'm very community focused. And here in Hawaii, we're 70%, Pacific Islander Asian American. So that just tends to be the talent that I'm working with. And Cashback specifically was also inspired by the pregnancy of my lead actress. She became unexpectedly pregnant, I think at 20, and I just was really excited to tell a story about a young pregnant woman, played by a young pregnant woman. Unfortunately, the pandemic hit and we had to push our production back, and so she did give birth to her daughter, and we had to put a prosthetic belly on her, but it was very natural for me to cast her in that role. And then actually the actress that was playing across her is her half sister, which was not intentional when we began casting, but again, community focused, regional, small is where we ended up. So.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. I've learned so much from this really quick Q&A, especially looking beyond representation, right? Like looking beyond what's on the image, on the snapshot, if you will, and then going deeper, right? And like really knowing people's stories, what they're going through, and the nuances of their experiences. So thank you so much, everyone, for all of your stories. Before we go, I just wanted to ask you all as a parting, question, what you're all working on now and how can audience members best reach you and connect with you. And anyone could start.
I'll go. Okay. We just wrapped a 6-episode web series the end of January. So we just went into post, and it's based off of a short film I did like 2-3 years ago called Broke, which was just about a young Muslim couple at the therapist's office. And so it's just that they're at the therapist's office and they're discussing their issues, and we get to see their versions of what they're talking about. And I'm on Instagram. I just started recently. It hasn't been that long. But yeah, Asad M. Faruqi on Instagram.
Right now I created a independent pilot television show a couple years ago, and it just debuted on a new platform called Aperture Television, Aperture TV, and it's now a 3-episode series that I wrote, directed, and produced. It's called Companion, and it's about a sober companion to the stars. He's a sober coach to celebrities, loosely based on me and my creator's experience in treatment. And we're really proud of it. And so you can see that there. You can reach me at mattferrucci.com, has all sorts of stuff. And I just want to shout out the lead actor in our short is Elaine Uwe, who's also the lead in Paper Tigers, which is I think one of the centerfold films in the festival. So if you want to see another side of Elaine where he's not kicking people's ass, check out Anything for You.
I can hop in. I am wrapping up post on another short, which follows a professional circus clown as she rage ends her relationship with her performing partner right before they are supposed to take the stage together. So she is forced to perform a solo act that she improvises with a tennis racket. And that was inspired by my experience directing and performing circus, and also set out of the same theater. And you can find me online, social media, my website at Zoe Eisenberg.
So I can come in. So I am back shooting as a DP. So I recently completed a series on Netflix called Dive Club, and I'm currently just reading scripts for a couple of features this year. One in I think Los Angeles, and the other one might be India. So fingers crossed it all kind of falls into place. But I'm on Instagram. I've gotten actually a lot of work through Instagram. But yeah, it's Sam Chatterjee, and then I'm on samchatterjee.com as well. Yeah.
All right, and I am currently in research and development of a personal experimental doc short called A Million Kisses from Lolo. Lolo means, in Tagalog, means grandfather. So it's a piece about my grandfather, who was a Filipino veteran in World War II, who never got recognized by the US. And he wrote a screenplay back in 1957. So it's a doc about generational trauma and creative legacies. So stay tuned. Hopefully I can finish it this year. But you can follow me on IG and also my website, Corinne Makes Media.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm so excited for all of your awesome projects. It sounds so great, and I can't wait to hear more from you. But for now, thank you so much for being part of SAAFF 2022. For everyone watching, please check out Snapshots and other great programs playing at SAAFF right now, available virtually from March 3 to 13, 2022 at bit.ly at SAAFF 2022. And thank you so much again, everyone. And thank you to all of you as well.
Thanks, Adrian.
Thank
Thank
you.
That's for you
you.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.